Um, I was in academic life for a long period of time. We won't count years. But one day I was walking out of my office at the University of Ottawa to go along the canal, just to clear my head. And as I walked along the canal and walked under a bridge, there was an elderly woman sitting on the ground with a cap on. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And so started a conversation with her. And it turns out that this was an elderly woman who was very, very well off indeed. But because of mental health issues, slept her nights, summer, winter, spring, and fall, on the grates outside of buildings. I don't know how the Spirit worked from that, but obviously the Spirit worked from that. And shortly after that encounter, I had been invited to apply for an administrative position in another university. And I went and I interviewed and the offer was made and I did what you always do and said, well, I just needed a little bit of time to think about this. And it was a miserable, cold January night in Ottawa, my underline, because that says something about the cold. I got off the plane and my car was covered in ice, so I said, I'll drive around and let it melt off or else I'll not be able to use it in the morning. So, being a bit of a workaholic, I went down to the university, got out of the car to go into my office to work, and this woman was sitting on the grate outside the door. And she said, welcome back, Ruth. And that was the end of it. I mean, academia had no interest after that at all. And it irked and it irked and it spewed and it sputtered and it did all of those things that said you can't be so illogical as to start something new again, Ruth. And yet that's not how the Spirit led. When I was doing my theology at Queen's, United Church, people are required to do 8 months of practice ministry in one place or other. And it used to be that you could do 2 4s or you could do an 8, 2 4 months or 1 8 month. And so I wanted to do an 8 month in a mission somewhere. And it was all set to go. Not in Vancouver, but it was all set to go. And suddenly there was a phone call. And the Spirit had moved again. Because the Spirit said to the United Church of Canada, that's not where she needs to be. She needs to be in Halifax. So they sent me to Halifax for 4 months instead of 8 months, on the recognition of a commitment to me that the final 4 months I had left in internship could be done in a mission context, preferably Vancouver. And there I found myself. April 1994. An intern at First United in the downtown east side of Vancouver. And I thought, wow, that Spirit really knows what it's doing. Until I got to the housing arrangement they'd made for me, which was in one of the buildings that we owned, which was full of people who needed help and needed to recognize that they were good people and loved by God, and also filled with cockroaches, which I'd never lived with before, consciously anyway. But it was a fascinating experience because I was 2 blocks from the office. And I would walk into work at 6 in the morning or a little earlier, and I would walk home at night at whatever time life got over. And all the way in those just a couple of blocks, there would be conversations that would happen from person to person to person. One of the individuals who stands out in my mind was a man who arrived from the downtown east side from Montreal, actually, who had a master's degree in library science and had a job at UBC, and arrived at the job only to find that the funding had been taken apart and he had nothing. He started living on the street, and I don't know the relationship of saying he was mentally ill and therefore he didn't work well, or he didn't work well and where's the chicken and the egg? But somehow he decided that Ruth needed protection. And every morning I would come out of the building I was living in, and he would be standing at the door because he knew about when I would come. He would walk me all the way to the office, 2 blocks, disappear, and come back when he thought it was about time for me to go home. We ran a lot of programs, actually 70 programs at First United. Everything from having street nurses work from our building, having community center activities built within the context of our day, allowing people to sleep on our pews, feeding them as many times as we had food to feed them, clothing, etc. Literacy classes, courses offered by all sorts of different agencies within the context of our building, which is very, very central. It's 125 years, 127 years, the ministry of First United Church. Wasn't always united because the United Church isn't that old. It was Presbyterian and Methodist and then United. Saturday evenings we had an event that we called Saturday Night Fellowship, which was arrive, we'll show you a movie, there's food, let's get to know each other. It's a way to be somewhere other than in the bars and on the street. And we would see probably 80 to 100 men and 15 to 20 women, heavily oriented toward ministry to the men at that stage. Haven't forgotten the man who walked me home. This one evening he came to Saturday Night Fellowship and he just was not contented. I could see it all over his face. There's something wrong. And so I kind of watched him, and I saw him stick a sandwich into his pocket. No problem. I mean, that's not anything that would bother us. But for him, that was really traumatic. And so I made my way to a conversation with him and said, what's going on? Obviously, you're not happy tonight. And he told me that his very good friend, partner, who shared his bed under one of the bridges, was there and very ill. And he was hungry. And this fellow really wanted to help. So, do you suppose I could take a sandwich? I said, sure you can, but only if you'll eat the one you have in your pocket. Because I don't want you to go without food too. And he allowed me to walk with him to the bridge and under the bridge and to see that his partner actually got to the hospital. That's the type of accompaniment that happened in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of time during the days in the mission. But there was a formal type of accompaniment too. Paralegal advocacy, with 4 full-time advocates who worked really, really hard to see that people were housed, that they got the health care that was theirs, that they got proper references to people for help who had the skills to do things that we didn't have the skills to do. But in my time as director there, which came 2 years after I had been ordained, and lasted for another 10 years, we worked under the principle that we didn't take government money. And we were very firm on that as a stand. I'll just set aside and say the current administration at the mission has a different philosophy. They do accept government money. The reason we didn't is that it didn't, every time you accept something from somebody, it takes away your voice. And so some things that began to unfold, some real attention to the fact that women were missing from the streets in increasing numbers, led us to work with a women's organization. And then with Maggie DeVries and some of the other family members of the missing women, to make the cause very, very public, and to try to force the hand of the military, no, try that again, the police, to do something really concerted in not looking at just these individual cases, but the bigger picture that was happening. And this still goes on. I was able to take to our board a request that most of my time be spent in the missing women's issues. They were happy for that to happen. And so we started working more and more on the street with women on the street. We have been primarily a male mission. The other thing that began to become quite obvious was that when I was there as a student, most of the people that we worked with were, well, we were given figures like 70% of the people we worked with had mental health issues. That's a lot of percentage, but it's real. Addiction, yes, but often they came hand in hand. I don't know where the cause and effect is, and it doesn't make any difference if we can help in both cases. We also had a fairly large group of transsexual individuals who were trying to gain recognition as human beings in the public eye, and so we did a lot of work with that group. As drug treatment became more and more of an issue, as the need was seen more and more obviously, as the public in general recognized how huge the addiction problems were in the community, conversation began to occur broader and broader and broader with lawyers, with doctors, with medical services, with mental health services, etc. With the very question of how is it we're going to be able to stop the death rate that's growing so rapidly with addicted people. And then the very obvious response comes, if you treat them, they'll get better. If you treat them as human beings, they might even have a chance. If you really believe that the approaches will help people become safer, then isn't it logical that you'd be doing something about it? Well, yeah, of course it is. Talk with the staff, and the staff think, yep, we can add something more to this. But more and more, there was conversation in the broader community about the need for some safe places for people to use. And therefore, there was the start of a conversation about supervised injection sites. And that whole concept, I thought, was going to blow the population of Vancouver right out of the sky. And there was a plebiscite. And the plebiscite was firmly supportive of the development of systems that would allow people to be treated for their addictions and get off the street without being punitive. I was approached by the National Office of People with AIDS Association and asked if we as a staff, if I would take a frontline position on this, and if we as a staff would go to the board and ask for permission to be involved very concretely in this project. The board were careful in their thinking and praying and consideration, and went away for a week and came back and said, of course. So the next thing I found myself greatly involved in was trying to convince the current mayor at that time that this was really a good idea. This was not just going to be more and more problems. And he started out absolutely against the idea of supervised injection sites. I mean, you got a really not on my watch response. And if you've ever seen a conversion, then I would, or would ever like to see a conversion, then I suggest you go back and look at the newspapers over those 2 or 3 years when Philip Owen changed from being, no way you're going to do anything like that here, to, we've got to get the funding to do this stuff. I was excited and surprised and felt blessed, and I was blown away, perfectly honest, when I said to the board, well, you know, this stuff isn't moving. We've got to do something to make it much more public. And so it was about a week later that the front page of the Sun said, the United Church minister says, if there isn't concrete action in a short period of time, we will open supervised injection sites. Hooray, well, quoi. It would be no skin off my nose, but for the board it would be a major issue around funding, if nothing else. Well, we ended up putting 2 supervised injection site templates in different parts of our building, our mission building, opening the doors and saying, you want to know what a supervised injection site is like? This is what it's like. And the nurses, the community nurses, the doctors, the police people who were involved, who were pro, all showed up. And we did for about 3 weeks, just constant education programs about supervised injection sites. And then, it wasn't ours to do anything more than to help them come to the point that the government said, yeah, we've got to do something. And now you know and I know it's threatened. But it was something. I've gotten at least to point number 1 on my little sheet. I've talked too much. Let's stop and have some Q&A.